Don't join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. So if there's one thing that I think for the last even just a couple of hours has come up kind of in this space is this overwhelming desire for people to want meditation, Buddhism, whatever you want to call this whole thing, to answer questions for them. Not just you, Chuck, don't worry. I don't want Chuck to think I'm just picking on him. There was 3 hours before you, and there was a whole 30 minutes after you. So I just had to say that, or he'd been sitting here for an hour thinking I was picking on him.
You never do that.
This stuff isn't here to answer questions for you. When I say this stuff, I mean meditation and Buddhist practice. It's not there to answer your lifelong questions about the meaning of everything. It is, in fact, that endless search of trying to answer all these questions you have that is actually causing the suffering that you're experiencing. This is my, Jeff's, unenlightened interpretation of the Buddhist teachings. And as a Zen practitioner, and someone who looks specifically at that body of teachings, it's about learning to be present with things as they are. That's it. So it's learning to sit with this and be with it. Not where did it come from? How big is it? Where was it made? What does it sound like? Who gave it to me? How long has it been here? Where's it going to go? But just, this is how I'm going to use this. That's it. That simplifies life. But if we use the mind that has complicated our lives for so long, so many years, you know, I'm not mentioning any ages in the room, but some of you in this room have been at it a little longer than others, and some are brand new day one, right? If you're brand new day one, my suggestion is to don't go into this practice trying to answer anything, but try to experience things as they are. That's really difficult for most people. Especially when we finish the meditation and I say, okay, any questions? Right? But at least in the practice that I kind of came from in my background a little bit in there weren't questions. There wasn't answers. There was sitting. There was a talk given on the Buddhist teachings, and that was it. There wasn't, well, what about, or how do I, or how do they, or when can I, or when will I, or what do I do, right? That's therapy type stuff. And in therapy, that's really useful, right? This is cheaper than therapy, and I think complementary and also extremely useful. It's the opposite of trying to figure anything out. And it is the practice of being with things as they are. So, as we go into meditation, Chuck's already shaking his head. As we go into meditation, you can sit with how pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral what I just shared made you feel. Pleasant, he's leaving already. Unpleasant, or neutral. How does that make you feel? Become aware. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Observe that. Because you're all sitting with it right now. This is what the Buddha taught. We have pleasant, we have unpleasant, we have neutral. Be aware of what that feeling is. As soon as your head kicks in and tries to analyze it and figure it out, you've missed what that experience actually is. And then the same mind that has caused your suffering your entire life. All right. Actually, let me just be sure. Is everyone in here suffering to some extent? If you're not, you're in the wrong class, right? So we're all suffering. So be with that. But now we'll meditate to fix that. All right? Anyone here for the first time? Oh, congratulations. Yeah. It's actually much better when I'm like this and I'm not like trying to make sure everybody gets what they want to hear, you know, because that's what we're used to, is being like going to a place like this and making sure we feel good and that we get what we want, and, you know, that we say a bunch of funny words and we leave feeling all warm and fuzzy. No, I want us to leave being completely aware of what a mess we are, and that it's caused by nobody but ourselves. And how fun is that? It sucks. So welcome to Buddhist practice.
Should I walk out?
You should. Yeah. That's funny, because once in a while I do things like this just based on literally whatever's going on the last couple hours. And I really, truly believe that this approach with Buddhist practice is way more beneficial than everybody feeling like they're getting the questions answered that they want answered. You know? So, all right, so meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Okay? You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. The practice of meditation is learning to be quiet and still within all of the chaos, not escaping from it. All right? You won't think nothing. Often people think meditation is about going blank or thinking nothing. You end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing, and it's a waste of time. I have to get up and go do something. Okay? Posture. You want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands are on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the benches or chairs, also just trying to sit up straight. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. And throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds inside, outside. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought, returning attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments. Simply sitting. Breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. even with the body still, rested. The speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize every feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. Has nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands, across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samupata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen, and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. This is your life every single day. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. Now, all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It is not the escape. It doesn't solve all or any of your problems. It makes you become present and aware of what you think and what you say and what you do. Most of our lives are spent trying to control, fix, manipulate what other people think, what other people say, and what other people do. And that's why it's difficult, because it requires us to look at the nature of the only thing that causes our own suffering, and that is our own mind. It's a lot easier to blame everything on everybody else. That's simple. It's really difficult to look at what we think, what we say, and what we do. And to then recognize the impact that that has throughout our lives. That everything we think and everything we say and everything we do impacts people, places, and things. Now, the flip side to this is we're all sitting here, meaning others in our lives are not. So they're not necessarily trying to figure out everything I just said. What that means is that puts us in a situation where we have to recognize that our words, our thoughts, and our actions are going to impact those around us. The practice isn't to tell them, oh, just do your Buddhist thing and don't allow my words to affect you. It doesn't work that way. Our words impact people. Our thoughts impact people. Our actions impact people. This practice is to become aware of that. The suffering that we cause in our own mind and our own hearts, and the suffering that we bring onto others based on what we think and what we say and what we do. And taking responsibility for that is important. And that's why it's a practice. You know, often we want things to just, the first thing the Buddha said, it's like he was called the Buddha, the awakened one, and they realized he had ultimate wisdom. They said, we're going to call you the Buddha. And the first thing he said was, life is filled with suffering. That sucks. Somebody said like 20 years ago, they read Buddhism in college and they read the first page or 2 pages and they said, life is suffering, and then they stopped. They didn't turn the page. 20 years later, they got back into it and they realized that there were things he said after that But the first part is to recognize that we spend so much of our time trying to escape. And that's where I'm coming from when I started today, pretty directly with wanting us to escape and make everything okay. That wasn't the first thing he said. The first thing he said was, you're going to suffer. But then can you begin to understand why? Can you explore that in your own mind? Not others' minds, not other people, places, or things, right? We have a thing we do with the college group, which I think is really beautiful. There's a lot of things in the college group that's really beautiful, and I'm not just saying that because some of you are here, but this just popped into my head. And after, when we open up in a discussion, there's probably 70 people there. And the practice is to speak from how the teaching or whatever we're focused on that night from a place of I. This is how this impacts me in my life. When I think this, when I say this, when I do that. And it's really embedded into, ideally, the culture, what we create there is to look at it from how does this impact my life? And I think that's so important when you look at Buddhist teachings because it has to start there. Then you understand that how it impacts your life plays into those around you. But if I am greedy, what happens in my life and to the life of those around me? If I am angry, what happens in my life and to the life of those around me? If I am ignorant and foolish and think that I know best, what happens in my life and to the life of those around me? But it has to start with that sense of self first. One of the great Buddhist expressions is you must get to know the self before you get rid of the self. Again, if you read like 12 pages into Buddhism, you'll hear this thing of like non-self. And say, well, I don't exist, so it doesn't matter what I say or do. No, you exist, just very differently from how you perceive yourself to existing. So it's really taking ownership and accountability. And when life throws you challenges, which it will every single day, every day people will say and do things that you don't like. Just recognize that. You cannot escape that. This is life. It is the wheel of samsara. It is the cycle of birth and death. And you are alive. We have all been lit. As it said, we have this life. And we don't know when it's done. So we can spend each moment confused and angry and trying to solve all the world's problems. Or we can spend each moment thinking about how we impact that immediate situation. So with that, I'll stop and open up to all the wonderful questions that I can answer and solve problems for everyone. I didn't even finish asking for questions. Yes, sir.
It's very interesting because I was thinking before we got here today that if it was an opportunity, I might ask about the concept of no self.
That's great.
So if you could expand on that, I would appreciate it.
Yes. So, non-self, right? First, understand a couple things. That one of my favorite expressions in Buddhism is that the unenlightened, so these teachings, they say, these enlightened teachings, we use these unenlightened, ignorant minds. No offense to you, I'm talking about myself. I use my unenlightened, ignorant mind to try to comprehend very enlightened teachings, such as non-self. So I am going to explore what no self means. Impossible, intellectually, right? How can I explore what non-self is? But I'll say a few more things just to confuse you or, at least keep you going on this journey. Do you recognize when your actions are filled with selfish behavior?
Yes.
That is completely full of self. Do you recognize when your actions are what we would say maybe more altruistic or selfless,
Yes.
right? That would be closer to non-self. That's one way to look at it in a very practical sense. That makes sense so far?
Yes. Moving
Okay.
in the right direction.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm moving in the right direction because that means I'm giving you the answer you want. And as long as you get the answer you want, then everything's great.
I don't think I had an idea of an answer that I wanted, but it's clarifying.
Good. Another way to look at it, and just my first master, she used to always say, when you ask questions, don't look for answers, just rephrase the way you ask questions. And I thought that was a really brilliant lesson that I got a long time ago that helped me. Another way to look at non-self is to understand that whatever perception you have of yourself, what's your name?
Tom.
Tom, right? You're relatively new here, right?
Yes.
Is this day one?
Day 2.
Day 2, okay. So you have a perception of Tom your whole life. You've told stories about Tom. Other people have told stories about Tom. Tom is this and Tom is that, and Tom has this family or that job or this house or that car or these clothes or this haircut or these glasses, right? Those are all stories. That's not who Tom is. Those are stories, those are perceptions, those are labels, those are judgments, right? You like pizza?
Yes.
Great, we can hang out and have pizza sometime, right? Let's say you have a slice of pizza and somebody says, tell me what it tastes like. And you start describing what it tastes like. Is that actually what it tastes like?
That's only my perception of what it tastes like.
Right. The only way you know what pizza tastes like is you take a bite. As soon as you start talking about it, you are no longer describing what it actually tastes like. It's your perception of it. Now relate that back to the stories I was talking about earlier. These are all the stories. These are all the ideas of what we think something truly is. So I like to look at, instead of thinking, what does non-self actually mean? I like to look at how wrapped up in myself am I? And for most of my life, pretty wrapped up there. Yeah. Does that give you a little bit of an idea to at least help head in the right direction? The worst, and last thing I'll say on this, for those who might be brand new and have never heard the expression non-self, and I touched on this very briefly earlier, but just to clarify again, the worst thing you want to do, and my suggestion is to not think that non-self means you don't exist, because that's where it gets very dangerous. Right? To think that, oh, no self, I don't exist, so it doesn't matter what happens. So it does matter what happens. You do exist. You are physically here, right? Your mind, your body, I don't know where your mind is, but your body is here, right? You're physically here. So you do exist. You just exist in a completely different way from how you and everybody else perceives you to be existing. So, does that help a little bit?
Yes, thank
At
you.
least for another 6 months to get you. Yeah, yeah, Jim. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I thought is non-self, and this may be very simplistic and wrong, but your idea of being in a traffic jam and realizing that is not the traffic jam versus Jim. Jim is the traffic jam.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as much a part of it as it is.
Absolutely.
So there's not that dual idea of me versus that. It is,
Mhm.
I'm in unity with it.
Yeah.
So that actually helps me quite a bit.
Definitely. Yeah, especially in traffic. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, so I might have been sitting a little unsettled with the no answers per se.
Probably the only one in here.
Yeah,
Sure.
no. And I guess it's like, how do you, I guess no answers, but it does seem like there's a way, like today at work, super bad interaction with a coworker, and like a few of us felt it. And I've just been thinking about like, how do you respond to those things?
Right.
Like, how do you use the Buddhist teachings to like not grasp or try to figure out your part or take it personal? Like, I was wondering if you, like,
Sure.
if you run up against somebody, because you were saying like your actions and the words that you
Yeah.
say impact others, what do you do with that and how do you create that space?
Yeah, it's difficult because there's what I said, and then there's the practical reality that for the next few hours, so many things are going to happen you don't like, and everything I just said is going to go out the window, right? So the question really, if I understand it correctly, is how do we balance, this is how I see it, how do we balance everything I was talking about with being at work and people doing things that you don't like, or arguments or disagreements. And again, for those who might be brand new to Buddhism, it's not about removing yourself from situations. It's not about just locking yourself in a cave. You have to interact and engage with people. And in engaging with people, you have to figure out, how can I be in conflict, right? I spent an hour on the phone with the credit card company today, right? The only reason you're on the phone with credit card companies is if there's conflict, right? So you have to figure out, how can I engage in this, right? It's just a person on the other side of the phone. They're a human. They maybe have family, kids, parents, bills, expenses, right? So how I interact with that person, just because in my mind they screwed up, right? And canceled a card they shouldn't have canceled. And I'm thinking, so did the person I'm talking to actually do that? No. They're the person answering the phone. They're the person trying to help me. And so I have to choose, how am I going to react in this situation? And can I bring it out to understand that they're just another human being suffering no different than I am, right? Now, was I on the phone saying, thank you very much for canceling the wrong card? Right? This is wonderful. Sure, we'll just not use our Temple credit card for 3 days. That's okay. You know? No. You engage in a manner that you go through this conventional world that we're in, right? But do you understand the impact that it can have on other people around you? So when you're at work, whoever's causing conflict or having conflict or being a pain in the you-know-what, they're suffering too. I don't know if that even remotely addresses the nature of your question, but it's not avoidance, it's not ignoring, and it's not pretending that everything is just perfect, right? Does that address it at all?
Yeah, I mean, this person, it's very often, it's just like an outward, like when you're feeling stressed. So it's like I get the compassion, like,
Yeah.
they've got a bad backstory, they don't have skills, to handle their, so it's repeated. So it's like trying to figure out how do you kind of.
But if it's a repetitive action, then in some ways it could even be easier, because you already know this is how they're going to be. You're like, oh, here we go again. This is what they do, right? Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting you say that to them, like, oh, here you go again. This is what you do. But in your mind, you want to figure out how to be with that. And a lot of what I'm talking about, this whole thing, is about how to be with things as they are. This person, it's a repetitive action, and that's how they are. And there's probably not much you can do about it. So you can be annoyed by it. You can find humor quietly. You can find sadness. The fact that they live their life this way, right? Like, what do you think it must be like for somebody like that? That's rough. They're probably in a lot of pain.
I was trying the meta thing.
Yeah, the sending loving kindness to them. They're, when we cause pain towards others, and in this way, it might not even be necessarily directly towards you, but it's a reflection of the pain and suffering that they are feeling. But it's not easy.
What's some advice that you could give on when you stray from the teachings and your compassionate, understanding self, like when you find yourself? So I tend to self-scrutinize, like when I have really negative thoughts and it just kind of spirals. And today I was in a situation, I was like trying to merge in traffic, and this lady like literally looks at me like, I'm not letting you over. And I literally screamed, the B word. And I was like, oh, why did I do that? And then I sat at home like all day, like, why did I say that? God, I should have smiled and like been like, cool, have a better day, or be better at being a person or something.
So for those in the back who didn't hear that, somebody cut her off in traffic and she called her the B word, and then has spent all day since thinking, why didn't I yell, have a nice day, or hope you feel better, right? You didn't because you didn't. That's why.
Yeah.
You didn't because in that moment you did what you had defaulted to most of your life.
Yeah.
The beautiful part is that you're sitting here now 5, 6, 7, 8 hours later, still wondering how you could reach a place in your life where you stop calling people nasty names just because they don't let you in. 6 months ago, if this had happened, you wouldn't be sitting here at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night asking yourself, how do I stop cussing at people who cut me off?
Yeah.
You would have just been rolling into tomorrow and doing the same darn thing over and over again. But at least now you're aware of it.
Yeah.
If you have been an angry person for 20 years, it's going to take more than 3 months to cut through that.
Yeah.
This is the practice of patience, right? And so it's interesting. I hear this question a lot over the years where people say, when I stray, you don't stray from the practice. You either are nice or mean. But we always want to relate it to Buddhism, you know? You are either a kind person or an unkind person. Buddhism has nothing to do with this. That actually puts more pressure on yourself because you're like, wait, I've been doing this Buddhist thing for the last 3 months, right? Sorry to embarrass you and put you on the spot. I facilitate a Dharma discussion at the temple every, I knew this was going to happen. Every Tuesday at noon, this is now, say hi to everybody, right? So every Tuesday at noon, I come in here and I play a beautiful Dharma talk for 20 minutes and we sit silent for 20 minutes. And then I facilitate a discussion with people on a Tuesday afternoon. And I called somebody the B word.
Awful.
It's not awful. It's human. But this pressure of like, oh, I should be this perfect little Buddhist now can actually make things worse.
Yeah.
You've known since you were a little child that you shouldn't yell nasty things to people. Just because the Buddha said it doesn't mean you should stop. You should stop because it doesn't feel right to you. The danger is what I call Buddhist arrogance, where we tie things to Buddhism and say, well, it's the Buddhist way to do this. Every religion says don't yell mean things to people. Are you concerned about straying from Catholicism or Christianity or Judaism or Muslim or anything else? Right now, no. You're worried about straying from Buddhism. You didn't stray from anything. You took out your emotions on somebody who's also possibly having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Right? Release the pressure you're putting on yourself. Or intensify it and be a better human being.
I'll try that.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah, you let me know how that goes. So. Yes, Patrick, I see your arm.
Something I really struggle with these days is discipline
Discipline.
and just kind of staying on track with like practice or my day-to-day things that I need to do in life. I get really self-destructive and like give up hope a lot of times.
Yes.
I'm just wondering like how you do discipline.
Yeah, discipline is, I think of, especially with Buddhist practice, when I think of discipline, the word that I kind of default to first, and it's one of the paramitas, as you know, is the diligence. And so I think of discipline, but first it's the effort. And the effort is there, just like Natalie's question, the effort is there or you wouldn't, and the intention is there, or you wouldn't be concerned with discipline, right? Some of you may have heard this story, but I'll share it anyways. This was many years ago at San Diego State. There was a 20-year-old kid, and he'd come to meditation. I was doing it every Monday. So he'd been there. He was an intern. He'd don't know, maybe 3 weeks of meditation. And he came in on a Monday. His name was Cole Palmer. And he said, Jeff, I think I understand how this meditation is helping. Patrick, have you heard the story yet or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. And I said, how's that? And he said, well, I was at a party Friday night, and this guy was talking to my girlfriend, and I got really angry. And I realized I should, I was probably going to get into a fight, and maybe I should walk away and take some deep breaths. And I said, that's great. What happened? And he said, I hit him. And I looked at him and I said, congratulations. He was like, what do you mean congratulations? I got into a fight. I said, yeah, but there was a moment where you recognized you should probably walk away. You didn't walk away. You hit the guy. But at least you realized that you didn't want to be that way anymore. You are what, 21, 22? 21. And you recognize that you want to give up some of the potentially unhealthy habits that are absolutely ruining your life to some extent. Is that a fair statement? Somewhat, right? So, well, somewhat, because sometimes you want to give them up and sometimes you don't. Here's the thing. It's like we want to keep doing, sorry, what'd you say? We often want to keep doing these destructive things, and only when it gets really bad do we want to stop, usually the day after. But the night before and during and until 5 a.m., everything's great. And then the next day we feel like crap. And then we get stuck in the cycle, and then depression kicks in and we think our whole life is a mess. It really comes down to, and again, now I'll kind of go to the word where you said discipline, but it really comes down to recognizing the choices we make earlier and how they will play out. So we know on a Tuesday night, on a Saturday night, whatever night it is, the choices we make at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, we know what that's going to play into 6 hours later. But once we make that first choice to head in a certain kind of karmic direction, it's really hard to stop. Because then that karmic arrow gets shot, and it's just, then you get into, addictive patterns, behaviors. Patrick, have you ever driven when it's raining?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you imagine, if you will, the raindrops kind of falling on the windshield, right? And I don't know why when I was a kid I was fascinated by this, but when a raindrop hits a windshield, it kind of like sits there for a minute, and then it hits the groove of the other rain, and it's gone. And it just like it's gone. That's our mind with the choices we make. We have to catch those choices early on. And when we don't, we end up here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And for those who don't know me, I just say this, I'm the guy who's been leading this for the last 10 years. So I'm only here because I've done all of these things I'm talking about, right? And often still do. That's how I know this stuff. The other way to look at it is when we wake up and we say, I just don't want to live this way anymore. I'm tired of being depressed. I'm tired of being tired of being depressed. I'm tired of being angry. Suffering sucks. It's not fun. And that's where we turn to page 2 and say, okay, what is the cause of my suffering? And the cause of my suffering is the attachment to self, the attachment to sense pleasures, the inability to be with things as they are, and the craving and desire to escape from reality and getting lost. Reality is pretty magical as it is. So I don't know that I even answered your question at all, but I know that I gave you a lot to think about. Yeah, Bruce, and then we'll close. Oh, we should close already.
Touch
Yeah,
on being with things as they are.
yeah,
The Buddha was 2,600 years ago. He wasn't okay with things as they are.
right.
He determined to change that.
Yes,
He was unsatisfied.
yes.
How does that jive with being okay with things as they are? I'm confused.
Good. I'm glad you're confused. And if you're not okay with the way things are, then you work to change them. I'll close with this thought. Every Thursday, as most of you know, we do a food redistribution program. I usually say this at the end anyway, so I'll just touch on it briefly now, but we prepare, as I always say, gourmet vegetarian meals, and we feed a few hundred people sleep on the streets every night. And as I say at the end, when anytime you lack gratitude, go feed people sleep on the street tends to put things into perspective. And the program has evolved and changed over the years a little bit, and I don't know, about 3 months ago, we finally went away from peanut butter and jelly, and we decided, to go back to getting food that would be wasted. And so we started getting better quality food, a little bit here or there, right? And we had one meeting, and this group has been incredible at kind of revamping this program. We've had challenges and ups and downs, but they've done a phenomenal job at revamping this program. And at one of the meetings they had, they were asking about, can we go buy stuff? And I said, no, the purpose isn't to buy more. The whole point of the redistribution program was to tap into some of the billions of pounds of food that are thrown away every year and redistribute it, not ship in crates of peanut butter from Walmart. And we thank you all who did that, but that wasn't the purpose, right? And so somebody at the meeting said, well, it really breaks my heart to see people on the streets and we don't have food for them. And I said, has anyone at this table called anyone, any restaurant, any grocery store, anyone, anywhere, and asked them if there's food? And at that point in time, nobody had. So if something really breaks your heart and you're really uncomfortable with something and you're really suffering, then you'll do something about that. And I don't mean just talk about it. Do something. Right? I choose to say everything beautiful just as it is, because the alternative is to think that everything is a nightmare, and living that way sucks. Right? One of my favorite expressions, and I'll close with this, is it's a Zen expression, and they say, to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. So we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Simba during his time of rebirth, and to the Hatch family during their time of suffering, and to Alan J during his time of rebirth, and the entire J family during their time of suffering. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.